Hey, I'm Alex. I'm the founder of careerlaunchcamps.com and the STEM Career Accelerator on School. For the last 12 years, I've been recruiting for companies across the US, UK, and Europe, primarily within STEM, but also for roles within finance, legal, operations, product, and sales. I'm a dedicated recruiter for Y Combinator-backed companies. Okay, and aside from recruiting, I've been working for the last 12 years with job seekers like yourself that are struggling to navigate the market, struggling to land interviews and offers. And my job here is to essentially help you figure out where you're going wrong, implement a strategy that works, and fix those problems so that you can actually land more interviews through direct applications, inbound opportunities, social and networking, and external support systems. Now, today I'm going to take you through the exact system that I've helped over 5,000 people land offers in the UK, US, and Europe to correct your resume. Okay, because there are a lot of people that are reaching out to me on LinkedIn directly, coming to me as a client or within my accelerator that are struggling to write their resumes correctly. And most of the time it's because of a lack of understanding, but also because people are using the same basic prompts on ChatGPT, Claude, or different AI resume builders that actually gives you an end result in terms of a resume that is not useful for recruiters to actually evaluate your potential fit for their role. Okay, so what we're going to do today is I'm just going to take you through a very quick explanation of the system that I use. We'll take you through the prompt system that I use and the exact AI space that I provide to my clients so that they can fix their resume using this system. Okay, and then I'm going to take you through a very specific rewrite example. Okay, so this was one of my old clients' original resumes, and what we're going to do is rewrite this step by step over 9 different steps, and then I'll pop it into this resume template, and then we'll show you exactly what an end result resume should look like for you to go and attack the market. Okay, so one of the biggest issues that I find when working with job seekers is that they generally use basic prompts to rewrite the resume, tailor the resume. Okay, and it's totally fine to use AI to write your resume. Okay, there are some good solutions out there. There are some really bad solutions out there. But one of the biggest issues that I see is people generally use prompts like this. Okay, they're plastered all over LinkedIn. I've seen people on YouTube try and present this as the optimal way to rewrite your resume, but it just isn't. Okay, so if you're somebody that's used AI to write your resume before, and you've used prompts like act like a resume writer with 20 years of experience, rewrite my resume to pass ATS filters and make it keyword optimized, or act like a recruiter, attaches my resume in the job description, tailor or rewrite my resume to the JD, make it a 70% plus match, ATS-friendly, keyword optimized. Okay, if you've used a prompt something like this, maybe not word for word exactly like this, but something like this, then I'm going to explain exactly where you're going wrong. Okay, there are various reasons that these prompts fail. Okay, but here are some of the reasons. Okay, there's no definition for what act like a recruiter means. There's no definition for what act like a resume writer with 20 years of experience means either. Okay, there's no breakdown of what ATS optimized means, what the 70% match is actually analyzing and evaluating against. It produces low context and low evidence bullets. Okay, a lot of the time you'll see different career coaches or people creating content to help you navigate a job market that say you need an action verb, you need some kind of metric to showcase impact, and you need the tools, methodology, or strategy that you've used. Okay, now that is a good start, but it's not the correct way to write your bullets, which is why prompts like these, okay, produce low context and low evidence bullets. Okay, you'll get vague metrics and you'll also suffer from keyword stuffing. Okay, what you need to understand is that the ATS is not blocking you. Okay, so if you think that your job search so far has been affected, okay, or had like an adverse effect based on AI rejecting you, keyword filtering rejecting you, robots in an ATS blocking you, or just the ATS in general blocking you, okay, all of those reasons are just fake. Okay, there is no applicant tracking system in the world that has anything called an ATS score. Okay, so if you're using products like JobScan, there isn't actually a universal ATS score. So you're writing your resume based on a percentage that actually has no basis within the job application landscape or context. Okay, and if you're writing your resume because you think you need X amount of keywords to pass through a filter, that also doesn't exist. Okay, your success within the job market is solely based on a human actually reviewing your resume. Okay, you may be auto rejected in some places, but that's nothing to do with AI. That's to do with something that we refer to as knockout questions or screening questions. Okay, so things like what salary expectations do you have? Do you require visa sponsorship? Do you have a driver's license? There are things like this which there is either a right or a wrong answer for the way that the company set it up, or there is a minimum parameter that you need to hit. Like for example, you may see on LinkedIn sometimes it asks for a specific tool. So how many years of experience with Python do you have? And if you say 3, but the company are looking for 4, then it will automatically reject you based on those screening or knockout questions. Okay, but it's nothing to do with AI in an ATS. Okay. So if we look at the things that actually get you interviews, okay, if humans are making a decision, then we need to be able to communicate our value in an effective way. Okay, we need to reduce guesswork, we need to provide complete context, and we need to quantify as many things as possible that help somebody understand the scale of the work that you've done, the environment that you've worked in, the impact that you've had, the significance of that impact to the wider business. And all of those things help somebody evaluate whether your experience is transferable to their specific business environment, but it also allows them to potentially calculate or envisage the ROI, the return on investment for bringing you into their business to work on a similar project versus another candidate. Okay, and it's as simple as that. What we want to do is implement a writing framework or a writing formula that allows us to include as much evidence and context as possible. And the formula that we're going to use is the formula that I created, which is the X, Y1, Y2, and Z formula. So you may be familiar with the XYZ formula, okay, where X is the action or the task, Y is the measurable outcome or measurable impact, and Z is the tools, strategy, methodology that you use to achieve the actual action or tasks X, okay? What we're going to do is amend that slightly, because the XYZ formula is a good formula to use if you don't know how to write a resume. But realistically, it leaves a lot left to guesswork. And we want to reduce the amount of guesswork that a recruiter or hiring team have to do. So what we want to do is split the Y component into two different parts. Okay, so we end up with X being the action or the task, Y1 being your measurable impact or outcome, Y2 being the broader business context or broader context with regards to that impact, and Z being the tools, strategy, and methodology. Okay, so we work over a 9-step system. Okay, now this system has been used by my clients either through my accelerator, working one-to-one with me, or when I've actually run workshops. And it's a proven system to rewrite your resume, which is a big part of the job search strategy that's actually helped over 5,000 people land jobs at companies including Google, Meta, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Amazon, and many, many more. Okay. So the 9-step system looks like this. Okay, it's a brief overview. So we want to identify your gaps in your current resume. Once we've done this, then we want to ask specific questions to help us extract context around the gaps that we've established. Okay, we then use these questions to rewrite bullets in the correct writing formula or framework, which is the X, Y1, Y2, and Z formula. We then rebuild the full resume, reduce any placeholders or remove them. We make it a clean format, okay, and reduce the amount of words per bullet point so that it's optimal for scanning. We do the exact same for a professional summary, which you can either include or remove, personal preference, okay, and then we analyze it versus the original resume, okay. Super simple, okay, but the only work that you would actually have to do is to actually answer the questions that we generate, okay. The great thing about this is you only need to do it once. The worst strategy that I see is people rewriting the resume for every single job description, okay. You should have a resume that best represents you for the particular market or niche that you're applying into. Then depending on the alignment of the specific role that you're applying to, it may or may not be worth tailoring your resume. Okay, but I have a separate video on that based on alignment to jobs, so go and take a look at that. But what we want to focus on here is writing your resume, okay, like a master copy resume, correctly first time. That way you don't have to amend your resume for every single job, okay, and you can ensure that your resume is written correctly for you to go and attack the market. Okay, so just very quickly, a bit of theory about what we're going to do here. So the 9-step system, okay, what we're going to do is take your current resume, which may be weak, maybe not, okay, but we're going to diagnose exactly what your resume has and does not have against the writing formula. So what we're looking here is we're trying to analyze against impact, context, scale, and tools, okay. We then want to use this analysis to extract the missing context and missing information through generating specific questions. So we're looking at 3 to 4 questions per bullet point, and then we're going to answer those questions and use those answers to rewrite the bullets, okay, keeping them between 18 and 40 words long. Then what we're going to do is assemble the full resume, including any technical skills, projects, experience, leadership, certifications, everything. Okay, we're going to remove the placeholders once we're happy with it, and then we're going to reduce the word count, remove any special characters, clean up the formatting to ensure it's good for extraction and scanning. Okay, tighten the summary if needed, and then we're done. All that we need to do then is compare it for market fit for the specific niche that you're targeting against the original resume so that we can see the differentiation. Okay. The important thing here is the reason that we're using this specific formula. Okay, most resumes only show 50% of the evidence. So a lot of resume bullets will showcase the X element and the Z element. Okay, some may show a Y1, but the majority will miss a Y2. Okay, so what we want to do is do a full analysis to ensure that we've got every single element of this writing formula covered. Okay, and that means we want to move from bullets that look like this with zero context to bullets like this, where we're using every single part of the writing formula to give the correct context and clarity, which allows somebody to evaluate your resume correctly. Okay, so what we want to move away from is any generic rewriting. Okay, we want to move away from buzzwords. We want to move away from anything that doesn't show scale or value. We want to move anything away from bullet points that don't actually evidence proof. Okay, because that's the most important thing, and move to an evidence first rewrite. Okay, it's super simple. It's important to remember that real proof is the thing that wins interviews. Okay, not keyword stuffing. Okay, not putting in a generic percentage or stat or figure just because you think you need to include a metric. There has to be a reason that that metric is in there, and we need to find the evidence behind a statistic. There is no point saying that you have a 20% increase in X if we don't know what the actual numbers behind that 20% are. Because what we need to remember is that recruiters are not just looking for somebody who is aligned, but we're looking for somebody that is experience is transferable to our specific business environment. Okay, so we need to understand what the numbers mean. Okay, now once we've actually analyzed the document, what we're going to do is ask questions. Okay, this is super simple, but what we want to do is ask questions which help us quantify things and understand the meaning behind vague terms or vague projects. Okay, so what we're looking at here is measurable impact, business context, scale, anything to do with stakeholders, frequency, and candidate value. Okay, we'll go into this when I showcase an example. But what we want to do is make sure that once we've done that and we've rewritten it and answered questions, that we've gained all of that context. So initially the bullet points will be longer because we want to include all of the context possible before actually reducing it to a more optimal length. Okay, so we're going to take a short bullet point, we're going to make it as long as possible, including all of the context needed or necessary, and then we are going to compress it. Okay, and then that will give us a bullet point which provides complete context throughout, and then we can put it into the resume. Okay, so what we want to move away from is a one prompt shortcut. Okay, so if we just go back up here, we want to move away from things like this, and we want to move away to a new system. Okay, so my system is now your system. Okay, so this 9-step system: diagnose, generate questions for context, rewrite, assemble, clean, compress, align, and analyze. Simple as that. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do that with the resume example that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so a few things to just point out here. So with this actual resume, what we want to look at is things like this. Okay, and things like this, and things like this. Okay, and things like this. Okay, just as an example. So when somebody's reading your resume, what they're not looking for is just keywords, okay? Because anybody can write keywords in your resume, which is why a technical skills section, in the majority of cases, should go right at the bottom of your resume. Okay, but if we look at these bullet points, what we want to look at here is what is this information actually telling somebody that has never met you, potentially never heard of the company that you work for, and is definitely not familiar with the projects that you've worked on in the same way that you are. So if we look at this, we're cutting approval delays by 50%. We don't know what that 50% actually means. Okay, the only person who knows what that 50% means is the person whose resume this is and the people that they worked with in this particular team. Okay, we don't know what this 50% equates to. We don't know how it was calculated. We don't know what the baseline was or the aftermark was, and we don't know why it was significant for the business. Therefore, it's impossible for somebody who wasn't involved in the business to understand how this could potentially be transferred to their business case, okay, or what your value actually is to work on a similar project. It's the exact same thing here. So reducing communication gaps using short 2-week agile sprints. We don't know why that's significant. Okay, we don't know what the after context of this particular achievement or project was. There's that same thing here, cutting report prep time by 10%. We don't know what that 10% equates to. Okay, if we're cutting time down, for example, by 10%, that could be 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 year. Okay, we have no idea, and we need to provide this information because a recruiter is not going to set up an interview with you to find out what this means. Okay, if a recruiter has to do guesswork or further investigation to understand who you are, what you do, and the value that you bring to specific projects, then they're just going to reject you and move on. So we need to provide all of that information. And as you can see, there's similar patterns throughout. And this is the most common error that I see looking at resumes every single day. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just showcase exactly how this system works. So there's 9 prompts, okay, in this particular system for rewriting. So what we're going to do is just copy this, prompt number 1, and we're going to head over to Resume AI. Okay, and then I'm going to attach the resume that we want to use. Okay, so OG resume 1. I'm just going to copy and paste this. And then I'm going to just attach a copy as well. You don't have to attach it, but I am just going to attach a copy as well, just to be sure that everything is 100% in there. Okay, so once we've actually answered the questions, okay, this is what it should look like. So here's the questions document that we made. And then what we want is answers like this. Okay, so what I've done is just made bold where the actual like metrics and quantification is, just so it's easy for you to see. Okay, so they don't have to be long answers. As you can see, this one's not very long, this one's a bit more detailed, but what we're looking for is you actually quantifying things throughout, because otherwise we're just going to run into the exact same problem. Okay, but we want to do that for every single question, and this is the most time consuming part, but you only have to do it once. If you don't do it and you skip on this, your resume is not going to be of the quality needed to actually get the success that you're looking for in the current market. Okay, it's as simple as that. But once you've done it, all that you need to do is head back to the prompt sheet and use prompt number 3, where we're actually looking to use the answers to rewrite the bullets. Okay, so if we head over here, just going to paste this in, and then head back to the answers document and just copy and paste the whole thing. Okay, and then run the query. And then what you'll see is it will rewrite the bullets based on the answers that we've given using the correct context in the correct writing formula. So what you'll see here is the X, Y1, Y2, and Z on every single bullet point. And what you can see here is that we've included the context needed for somebody to understand the scale of your project, the environment, the impact you had, the significance of the impact, which allows them to understand whether your projects and experiences, which are the individual bullet points, are potentially transferable to their environment. Okay, so we've got that for every single bullet point, including the projects and the leadership. Okay, so the next thing to do is use prompt number 4. So we're going to use that rewritten bullet points and piece together the actual resume itself. Okay. Okay, so what you'll notice here is at the minute, it's currently in a long form version. Because if you remember, what we want to do, here is add everything and then compress it. So the next step here would be to remove specific special characters, ranges, okay, and then we're going to reduce the actual word count. So if we just look at the minute at the original bullets, so for example, if we look at let's look at this one again, because this is the one that we looked at earlier. Link data sources into Power BI and DAX and Power Pivot, cutting report prep time by 10% through automation. Okay, integrate operational data sets into Power BI, cutting report prep time by 10%, saving 6 to 10 reporting hours weekly across 15 to 20 data sets through DAX and Power Pivot automation. Okay, so much more context there. Okay, but we're not quite finished with the rewrite. But as you can see, for every single bullet point, we've now got full context. Okay. Automated internal requests, Power Automate, SharePoint, and QR code, saving thousands per year through simple low-cost tools. Automated internal request workflows generating $18,000 to $35,000 in annual savings and eliminating 25 to 30 manual process hours weekly across 4 to 5 departments through Power Automate, SharePoint, and QR code systems. The data that's in here is real data that was obviously given to me doing this process with one of my old clients. Okay, so what you can see here is essentially the rewrite that we did. Okay, helping them rewrite their original resume that wasn't generating enough interviews to a resume that actually generates interviews. Okay, so we go to the next step, prompt number 5. What we want to do is remove the placeholders. Okay, and then from here, what we're going to do is remove any special characters. We want to make sure that everything that is written, any words that are written, any numbers that are written as words, sorry, are actually changed to the number itself. Okay, and we want to make sure that when we're using ranges, we want to remove the range, and we want to have either the upper limit or the lower limit, depending on the context of the bullet point. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, as you can see, so for example, we've got automated internal request workflows generating 18 to 35K. We've got 4 to 5 hours. What we're going to do is remove these to make it easier to scan, easy to read and understand. Because it's not important that a recruiter knows it's 12 to 18 restaurant locations. It would be better to know is if it's 12 or 18, depending on what works best contextually for your information. Okay, so we've now gone from, if we just have a look here, automated internal request workflows generating $18,000 to $35,000 in annual savings and eliminating 25 to 35 manual process hours weekly across 4 to 5 departments through the tooling. 2. Automated internal request workflows generating 35K in annual savings, eliminating 35 manual process hours weekly across 5 departments through Power Automate, SharePoint, QR code systems. So it's now a lot easier to read, Okay, it's less confusing because it removes the ranges, but we still have the exact same context that's there. Okay, the next thing to do, because what you'll notice here is professional summary is very long. It's not currently a summary, and some of these bullet points are long as well. What we're going to do is maintain the context. So we don't want to be removing any of these numbers and figures, but we don't want to ruin the grammar. We don't want to make it hard to understand. So what we want to do here is reduce the word count. Okay, only do this if it's needed, but just to show you what this looks like, we want to do it for the bullet points, every single bullet point that's in here. So what we're going to do is aim for 25 to 35 words per bullet point, because that hits the sweet spot. Okay, so as you can see, we've maintained all of the numbers, figures, and metrics. Okay, and now we've got more concise bullet points. The next thing to do is do the exact same thing for the professional summary. Okay. Okay, because with your professional summary, it should be just that, a summary. Okay, if you look at the old professional summary, what we've got is different percentages, metrics, figures. Okay, it's too long. But the issue with having metrics in your professional summary is, without actually knowing the person, personally knowing the applicant, I have no idea what this 50% actually is relating to in the experience. Okay, so somebody stating that they've reduced approval delays by 50%, I don't know which experience that actually is referring to. But not only that, when you're writing this here, it's just going to be duplicated down here. Okay, so it's just not needed. So you want to make it concise as possible. The only real figure or number that you need in your professional summary is the amount of years of experience in this particular domain that you have. Okay, once that's done, all we're going to say is great. Put the whole resume together. Okay, and then we'll have the concise professional summary, all of the bullet points there, and then we're essentially ready to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly put this entire resume together into this long form template, just so you can see what it looks like, and then we'll come back. Okay, so now what we've got here is a completely rewritten resume. Okay, we've done 8 steps so far, and as you can see, we've now got a resume that showcases complete context. Okay, we've moved away from generic bullets with low context and low value communication from through every single section to a fully contextualized resume. Okay, and it's as simple as that. The only thing that you have to do is answer the questions, and it should be super easy for you to do because it's your experience. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do here is just do the stage number 9, which is just an analysis comparing them both. I'm going to save that as Alex rewritten, and then we'll just save this one as Alex original. Okay, and then if we head into the prompt sheet, what we've got here is a analysis. So we want to pop that in. We'll put the original one in, we'll put the rewritten one in. Okay, we just want to say the original is Alex dash original docx. Rewritten is, make sure that's spelled correctly, is Alex rewritten docx. Okay, and then we'll just go through. Okay, so what we want here is to get a detailed breakdown. Okay, we're not just looking for a percentage fit because it doesn't mean anything. We want to know exactly why the rewritten one is different, if it's better, why it's better. Okay, so why it's more aligned to the market. Okay, quantified business impact, enterprise scale operations. The original resume contains strong foundational experience, but most achievements lacked impact, scale, business value, visibility, enterprise level significance. And then if we look at the specific comparisons, Okay, quantified impact and business value. Original resume, most bullets focused on tasks, tools, responsibilities. There is no scale, no user impact, no business significance, no measurable operational value. And this is one of the bullet points. And then in the new resume, what we've got is this is the exact same bullet point now rewritten with the correct context. Okay, we've added operational scale, stakeholder visibility, impact, enterprise level context, recruit friendly metrics. Okay, and we've done that throughout. Okay, so in terms of a final assessment, the original resume positioning based on scale, impact, environment, significance of the impact, transferability, ROI, and everything else that we want inside a resume, we've now taken from based on the calculation that we do here based on all of those things rather than just matching language, because matching language to a job description doesn't actually mean you have a good fit. Because that's not how recruitment is done. We don't base your fit for a job based on keywords in your resume. It's based on how well aligned are you to the market? Can you showcase value? Yes or no? Can you evidence it? Is it easy to understand whether it's transferable or not based on the evidence that you've given, the context? Okay, we've taken that from 62 to 68 to an 87 to a 92 based on all of the things that we're looking at here. Okay, and it's literally as simple as that. Okay, so the new resume is rewritten perfectly. A couple of questions that people might have, which I'll answer now, is can your resume go over one page? Yes. I have never met a single person in the last 12 years recruiting for businesses internationally that has ever rejected somebody for having a resume longer than one page or longer than 2 pages. Okay. I have met people that have resumes longer than one page that have been rejected, but that has nothing to do with the number of pages. It's because the information in there is not aligned to the company that they've applied to. Okay. Or the information in there doesn't actually communicate value very well. Okay. And it's as simple as that. Another question that I get asked is, well, what do I do if I don't have this information? Okay, realistically, you need the information. So even if it's an academic project, you need to be able to give the closest or best representation of what that data would look like. Okay, so if you don't have the 100% hard fact, what you need to do is give a 70 to 100% factual statistic, metric, or unit figure. Okay, because the important thing is to help somebody understand contextually what this project looked like. Okay, I'm not telling you to lie. Never lie on your resume. Never embellish information, but give something that best represents the truth. Okay, so if you want this system, the prompt sheet, and access to the Resume AI space, comment below, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll put the links in the description below, or click through to the link to the STEM Career Accelerator. Okay, once you get access to the STEM Career Accelerator, all of this information is right here in the resume optimization space. Okay, so you get access to Resume AI, Career Coach AI, and all the tools here. Okay, with a step-by-step breakdown in detail of how to do this. Okay, any questions, let me know. But that's it, very simple. Don't use basic prompts. Okay, don't try and trick the system or write your resume for applicant tracking systems because it's pointless, doesn't work. Write your resume for a human. Make sure it's contextual. Okay, make sure it's as detailed as possible without going overboard in terms of the length of bullet point. Okay, good luck with your job search. I'll see you next time.